Hi there. Welcome, everyone. Stan Craig. I'm so glad to have you back here with us for our webinar. It's a joy to be here each Wednesday and share hopefully some inspiration, some motivation, some education, and sometimes even a little humor. I don't know how that happens, but it does occasionally. But I'm so glad you're here. It's a delight to have you along. Today, we're going to talk about bacon, please. Yeah, sounds like Homer Simpson, doesn't it? Bacon. Who doesn't like bacon? Well, Living Will fills the bill, and it's really good for you. In fact, I think you're going to find that a living will is as basic as bacon. It may not smell as good, may not taste as good, may not have the problems that bacon can bring, but a living will is something that solves problems. And it's something that everybody needs. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hope you'll enjoy it. See our new NetLaw emblem down there, NetLaw, personal, digital, done. That's who we are. We're going through so many upgrades at NetLaw right now, many things that you will see, and we're hoping to be there at convention and talk about many of those things with you personally. So we're looking forward to time to get to know you, and I hope when you are there that you come by and say hi to Mark or Stan or Corey or one of our guys who's there. We look forward to being with you. So let's talk about bacon. No, let's not do that. Let's talk about a living will. The reason we want to talk about a living will is it's one of the most important things that we can do. I love this. This is what Gary Larson said. Life expectancy would grow by leaps and bounds if green vegetables smelled as good as bacon. Isn't that true? Oh my gosh. You can get little children to crunch down on bacon, but hard to get them to log into the broccoli, right? Or to tear into the Brussels sprouts. In fact, some of you won't eat those Brussels sprouts and broccoli on occasion, asparagus, and all those good greens that are good for you. Life expectancy would grow if everyone took advantage of a living will. In fact, let me give you a statistic. The New York Times, the Dartmouth Medical Study, and other studies have shown that by having a living will and by choosing comfort care instead of aggressive medical care, patients not only live more comfortably with less stress, but the evidence is they live longer. How would you like to extend your life, especially when it can be fraught with pain and difficulty? Listen, you know how you extend your life? And this is for you, those of you who are listening to me. You can extend your final days by having a living will and by choosing comfort care. The stress of intensive care is difficult. In fact, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit and why so many people are experiencing the difficulty of that. Well, living wills don't smell like bacon, but I tell you, they're better for you. They'll make you live longer. The real truth is not everything is good for you is as good as bacon. That's true, isn't it? I mean, filling out documents and talking about the end of life, many people hate that. That's what people just don't want to do. We're working on a way to make it even more accessible for the public and even easier for you, so that these are conversations that can make it happen for more of your clients. But in fact, as you know, too much bacon can be bad for you. You know, I wrote that down because that's what doctors say. But let me just tell you, as a guy who loves bacon, I don't think I've ever eaten too much. I've eaten so much I didn't care to eat anymore, but it was never too much. I mean, when you think about bacon tomato sandwiches, or bacon with eggs, or, bacon crumbled up on a salad, or bacon on a burger, how can you have too much bacon? Well, the doctors say you can, because bacon has a lot of nitrates, a lot of processing going through it, and of course, a lot of fat, which may not be good for you. But when you're facing a decision, the easiest thing to do is to do nothing, isn't it? That's the problem. When you're facing a decision, the easiest thing to do is do nothing. For example, if you're on a diet, the easiest thing to do is, not today. It's always the easiest thing to do. A friend of mine was speaking in his church, and he said, the easiest thing to do in life is to go downhill. All you have to do is sit on your butt and slide. And isn't that true? The easiest thing to do in life is to go downhill. And I trust none of you are experiencing that today, but you're finding that the uphill climb may be more difficult, but so much more rewarding. Just don't ever say, I'm going to take the easy way out, and that's doing nothing. More often than not, that's the worst thing you could do, is to do nothing. When you're confronting a problem, I remember again another quote from Charlie Brown, who said, there's no problem so big or so massive that you cannot run away from it. Did you hear that? There's no problem so big or so massive that you cannot run away from it. The truth is, that's the worst thing you can do, is to do nothing and to avoid it, because especially when it comes to end-of-life planning, because the truth is, the end of life will come. I trust you will live a long, prosperous, and successful life and simply go to sleep one day and wake up in the place where the Lord has prepared for us. But that may not happen for all of us. And so the needful thing is to take care of these documents now, because the worst thing you can do, and the worst thing your clients can do, is to do nothing when it comes to thinking about end-of-life planning, especially the NetLaw MD part. We'll be announcing later that we've broken out NetLaw MD into a separate company, a separate business plan, a separate format, so you can just market the advanced care planning, which includes a durable power of attorney for health care. It includes a living will and HIPAA authorities. Everyone needs to do this. Students as well. We're going to talk about a student plan later on. I'm excited to be a part of a group that's always trying to find more ways to do the right thing. Isn't that exciting? More ways to do the right thing. And I'm sure that's true of what you're doing every day too. You know, why is a living will? What is it? And why is it good for you? Well, my goodness, we've talked about that so much, but it's important to be reminded of it every day, because although this is on my mind, I did a webinar for a wonderful Saturday with one of our best guys, Jay Mamie, and Jay said, how could you just talk for 45 minutes without any slides? Well, it's easy for me to talk about this because NetLaw is one of my favorite things to discuss because of what it does. It is good for you because it brings you a living will. What is a living will? Well, we've talked about that before, but I want to reiterate for you. A living will is some call it an ethical will, but it's a will that allows you to state while you're living what kind of health care you want and what kind of health care you do not want. You will find it mentioned in literature, in books, even in my book, For Talk, an advanced healthcare directory, an advanced healthcare directive, a directive, not a directory. A directory is something totally different. That may be where you'd find how to get a living will, but you know how. You're going to get it through NetLaw. It may be called a personal directive. In some states, they call it a medical directive, or some call it an advanced decision. No matter whether it's an advanced directive, medical, or advanced, it is basically always a living will, a document that states the medical trip you want and do not want while you're living. And some people just simply say it's a DNR. That is not correct. It's a legal document specifying what action should be taken in health decisions if your client or you are no longer able to make a decision for yourself. Remember, as long as you are capable of speaking to the doctors, of speaking to your family, of explaining what kind of care you want if you're in the hospital or in a medical emergency, they will follow your directions. But just remember that anesthesia, an accident, medication, dementia, Alzheimer's, we go on and on and on, may make it, a stroke, for example, may make it impossible for you to speak. That's why you've got to have this document. Why have a living will? Well, because the increasing sophistication in medical technology. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Because medical technology is sophisticated, I need a living will? Absolutely. Do you know it is possible to keep you alive far longer than you are living? That is, with brain activity. And that's why living will directives even came about in the first place. Medical technology today is advancing so quickly that you can sustain life within a body even when the body itself is not living. That's a scary thought, isn't it? That's a scary thought for me, especially. I don't want that to happen to me. So because of the increasing sophistication of medical technology, you really need a living will, because studies highlight the deficits in medical care for the dying. Here we are, 2018, or whenever you're listening to this, and medical care of the dying is still where it was 20 years ago. We have new directives, but the medical profession hasn't caught up with how to deal with advanced care planning. In fact, most doctors in medical school who go through hours and hours of training will get less than 3 hours in how to have the conversations at the end of life. And yet, many physicians, cardiac, oncologists, those who deal with cancer, primary physicians, family physicians will want to have those conversations and need to, but they've never been trained. There's such deficits, and deficits in what to do. Their number one goal is to do what? Well, the Hippocratic Oath says to keep you alive. What if that's not in your best interest? What if keeping you alive brings you more pain, more difficulty, less comfort, more physical problems, and separates you from your family, for example, in intensive care? Do you want that? Not me. What happens is, if you don't have a living will, you can have unnecessary, prolonged, painful, expensive, and emotionally burdened treatments that will continue and continue and continue unless somebody says, stop. And if the doctor says, well, if we stop, he or she may no longer be kept alive. What's worse? Being kept alive in pain, suffering, expensive, or simply saying, my life has come to an end. I want to have a natural death. There's another reason. The process of dying is emotionally burdensome to both patients and families. I've told you before that Woody Allen said, I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens. And that's the truth for most of us. It's the process of dying that discourages us. And it's the process of dying that's burdensome to our families. When my brother was hospitalized, the doctors told us 3 times that Ron's heartbeat was slow, his blood pressure was low, and if we're going to gather the family, it'd be important to do it. So we did that 3 times. Gathered around my brother and talked to him and prayed with him, but it wasn't the time. It was emotionally invested on all of our parts, even Ron. But, he rallied back again. I wish I'd understood comfort care. I wish I'd understood comfort care. We never would have had those circles around the bed in intensive care. Those were frustrating for all of us, and for my brother too. My goodness, can you imagine having all your family around praying for you, thinking the end is coming, and then next morning having breakfast and saying, oh, hi there. How were things last night? Gosh, it's just crazy at the end of life. That's why these documents are critical. Here's the background and where these things came from. And there's some facts here that are pretty scary. Not this one, of course. A living will is the oldest form of an advance directive. It came in 1969. And basically, it was just a statement about a DNR. When it started, it was basically that. It came as a result of physicians and patients saying, what if I don't want this care? And then it wanted to try to control health decisions even when you can't make them, because the problem was, if you're in a coma, or you're ill, or you're in an accident, all those things we've talked about that may make you incapable, well, shucks. What if you don't want what all they're doing to you? So in 69, that started. But in 91, it became a full act of Congress. It was called the Patient Self-Determination Act. It went into effect in 1991. That was brought into care because of 3 young women, one in particular, who was kept alive long after she was living. So the Patient Self-Determination Act requires all healthcare providers to give patients information about their rights and to make an advance directive. That's why the last time you went to the hospital, the emergency room, or even walked into your doctor's office to start a new relationship, you just met a new cardiologist or a primary care physician or a pediatrician or a doctor of internal medicine. They want to know. They don't really want to know, but the law requires them to ask. And if you say you don't have one, they'll say, would you like some information? And that's it. Even in states like Kentucky that requires a most form printed on pink paper, others that describe a post, P-O-L-S-T form, they want you to have it, but it's not required anywhere. They just have to ask the question. But there's issues with living wills that you should know and be able to answer for your clients. A living will, when it first came out, was too limited in scope. That meant it just covered the very time of your death. Well, what about the treatment up till then? It didn't address the problems and the needs sufficiently. For example, if you can be kept alive on artificial breathing, do you want that? Do you know what results from that? Often pneumonia, often a collapsed lung, often water on your lungs, often that sense that you're drowning because of water accumulation in your body. Do you know your heart can't pump it out, and so there's water around your heart? It's called congestive heart failure. I mean, things just get awful when those things happen. That's the reason they said we've got to find a way to do this. But these documents that were just what to do at the end of life were often unclear. Well, what if this is a temporary situation? What if it's not a permanent situation? Or what if it's a permanent situation going to get worse? What do you want then? So it becomes really important that these were upgraded, and so they kept doing it because they found they weren't applicable in every situation. Is it different from someone who's 70 rather than someone who's 17 or 47? Do you treat someone who's 50 different than someone who's 90? You know, these documents have to reflect who you are. And frankly, if you're 45, you may have a far different feeling about this than if you're 65 or 75 or 85. So they had to find some way to be interpreted, to know what does this document really mean? And that made it even more difficult because most of the time, the document was never shared with the family. That's a huge problem, isn't it? What did mom or dad want? We don't know. And so children wind up making decisions. It's the daughter who thinks you're just so special, says, oh, please keep dad alive. And the son who says, got to get the old man out the door, pull the plug. You know, somebody has to make these decisions and interpret it. And that's why they created a second generation directive. And the second generation directive was this durable power of attorney for healthcare. Because the living will didn't have anybody who could interpret it. Certainly not the doctors. So they started this durable power of attorney for healthcare. That's a second level of education, second level of documentation for advanced care planning. So this power of attorney allowed for someone to be named by you when you are capable, when you are smart, when you still have capacity to act on your behalf. Now, notice I put a lot of qualifiers on there because if you no longer have capacity, you can't have a durable power of attorney for healthcare. So you got to do it now. Don't put this stuff off. This document was created to appoint a power of attorney who had the same rights to request or refuse treatment that you would have if you were capable. That means, as you've heard me say before, your durable power of attorney can speak exactly on your behalf. And if they say no, it's no. If they say yes, it's yes. If they say stop, then it's stopped. They're the person who's, if they say, I want to move you to another hospital, I don't like the way you're being treated. I want to be sure that you are in this home rather than that home where you can get better care. I want to take you home because I think this is terrible the way you're being treated here. Well, that person has the power. So the second generation, first generation living will, second generation is when they put in the durable power of attorney because that was really important. Because without conversations about the patient's wishes, the guesswork just continued. They had to have a durable power of attorney. Doctors don't want to guess, frankly. They're far, far better off when you tell them exactly what you want on behalf of the patient, and especially if you've had the conversation with the patient. So a durable power of attorney, a living will, that's a second generation marrying both of those together. Then there's a third generation, which is really interesting. First generation was what? A living will. Second generation was what? A living will and a durable power of attorney for healthcare. But the third generation came into being a few years ago. And it was a move from specific treatments and procedures to say, what's really important to you? What are your values? Your wishes? What are your goals? Suppose you have a decision that is terminal. Suppose, as my brother, you have a stage 4 cancer. What do you want? Do you want to have them do aggressive treatments with radiation and chemo? Let me just tell you a personal story again. My father had throat cancer. He had a friend who also had throat cancer. They were both heavy smokers. And my friend had to have the cancer removed. So he had his throat opened and his voice box removed and a breathing hole there and a hole to talk with a mechanical device. When my father saw what happened to his friend, when they said, Mr. Craig, you have throat cancer and it's spreading, we need to remove it, my dad said, no. I don't want to live like Jess. I don't want to be doing that. Just tell me what to do because I know Jess still has cancer. So why go through all that torturous treatment? Why go through that terrible, terrible removal of organs? Why go through that sort of butchery when it's not going to really provide the solution? No, I'll just deal with the throat cancer myself. And my dad said, I want comfort care. He died of his throat cancer, but he died at home. He lived several years without that problem, and he just treated it as best he could to avoid the sad pain. That's a choice if that's your values and if that's your goal. That's a reason it's important that you know not just what this document says, what do you really want? It links patients' values with their medical treatment. My father just said, hey, let me just tell you what I value more than anything. I value being whole. I value being able to eat. I value being able to speak to my family, to my friends, and to my loved ones. I value being able to communicate. That's what I value. And I want that to be figured into my medical treatment. And there's evidence that values regarding financial and psychological burdens are motivators for those who don't want a broad array of end-of-life treatments. Frankly, my father said, listen, that cost a fortune for Jess. And if you don't have adequate health insurance, it's got to come out of your pocket or somebody's pocket. I don't want to spend a lot of money on futile treatment. That was my dad's motivation. And there's a lot of folks who feel that very way. The reason is 5 Wishes was created, and that's why. You may know of 5 Wishes. It's the most widely known third-generation advanced directive. It includes a living will, a durable power of attorney for healthcare being appointed, and then a discussion of your values. It's an amazing document. In fact, the first time I heard of this, my 2 children who live in Florida called and said, frankly, that's why we live in Jacksonville now, because my son, daughter-in-law, and 2 grandchildren live here. He said, Dad, here's 5 Wishes. You got to fill this out. Yeah, let me just tell you, it's different than saying, Dad, you got to fill out a living will. Very different than saying, Dad, I want you to give me a power of attorney over your life if you're threatened and can't communicate. He said, Dad, here's 5 Wishes. I want you to read this and fill this out. And we did, because it starts with what's important to you. 5 Wishes have been adopted in 42 states that meeting the statutory requirements. Even in states where it doesn't meet the statutory requirements, it's still honored. I'll tell you something else interesting that I mentioned to you a while ago. Net law is always trying to find ways to better ourselves. So we are currently in discussion with 5 Wishes. And we're looking for a way to sort of bring 5 Wishes into what we do at net law, because it's an easier discussion when you talk about what are your 5 wishes. It makes it easier. But 5 Wishes doesn't have a digital platform. So perhaps together we can do more to help you and help your clients. It comes from a nonprofit agency called Aging with Dignity. It's a marvelous organization with one goal, and that is to help you age with dignity, for you to be in charge of your own health care. Our net law documents, as you know, are designed specifically for each state, meet the statutory requirements of all states, But 5 wishes is a document that doesn't read even like our legal documents. Remember, we've tried to make everything conversational for you, but the document itself has to meet the state legal guidelines. It has to have their language. It's like reading the manual to your car or reading the manual from Apple about your iPhone. It's like getting a new refrigerator and getting this manual and reading about the compressor. Oh my gosh, please don't describe the compressor to me. That's not something I want to know. But net law has to follow those legal requirements in order to be legal in every state. And we are. That's what Jamie has done. Jamie Hargrove, our founder, has made our documents legal in every state. So where do you come in if we got these documents? Why is it important that you understand this? Why am I taking time to talk about this today? Because a living will and a durable power of attorney for healthcare should complete at the same time. Remember, first generation living will, second generation durable power of attorney. When you write the living will, you should have the durable power of attorney done at the same time, and you should show it to the person who is your durable power of attorney. The remarkable thing about net law, remember, is you're doing this in a digital form, in a digital document. So you can share it with everyone around you. And frankly, I want everyone to know what's important to me. I think it's significant that my children and my family understand what's important to me. Being kept alive, tethered to an electric cord, I don't want that. So I want to do both at the same time and share them. Your state law and state-approved documents are important. So it's kind of important that you understand what they are. And if you're a state with a PLOST, a PLOST, or an MOST most form, you need to know. Oregon just had PLOST, and they just rejected it. There's so many changes in this area because, frankly, we're still in the dark ages. Remember, most has to be printed on pink paper. Oh, my goodness, what are they thinking of? In Florida, PLOST has to be on yellow paper. Oh my gosh, who's going to carry paper around and who's going to print it in colors? It's just the dark ages still. The important thing is, though, to review the documents and be comfortable with the conversation. Most people need you to help them. These are conversations that are personal. Remember, we said the net law is personal. But more than that, it's digital, and that's the reason it gets done. You can have the conversation with your client. They can fill out the documents themselves online at their own speed with their own values in mind and get it done, which is really important. Here are the scary parts of what I want to share with you, and I mean scary. I don't think this should be shared with anybody, but it is scary. I want you to know. Can a living will help you if you are one of those 2 million Americans committed to a nursing home? I remember a number of people said, don't ever put me in a nursing home. Why is that? Because out of everyone, that 2 million, 1.4 are so medically frail, they survive only through the use of feeding tubes. Out of the 2 million, 1.4 are so medically frail, they survive only through feeding tubes? Yes, that's the statistic. Listen to the next one. As many as 30,000 Americans are kept alive in a comatose and permanently vegetative state. Oh my gosh. Let me just tell you, none of those people chose that. The reason they're there is they had no living will, no durable power of attorney for healthcare, no one to speak for them. Now, there's many people who die alone. The children, or they had no children, they had no friends, their spouses had died, or they were single. But still, you can have the documents done. And in fact, if you are single, if you have no children, you need to have this done more than anybody. Because at least if you write it down and give it to your doctor, that's going to be followed. 30,000 kept alive in a permanently vegetative state. And here's the problem. If you do have children alive, if you do have a family, the cost burden to individuals and families are considerable. A national study found that in 20% of the cases, a family member had to quit work in order to take care of the person, had to be there every day, had to be at the hospital. 31% lost all or most of their savings, even though 96% of them had insurance. Why? because insurance stops after a certain point. It becomes a huge burden. Burden on what? On the 30,000 kept alive, on the 1.4 million on feeding tubes. Wow, scary, isn't it? And 20% of those reported a loss of their major income. This is the families who had the burden of trying to keep these people alive. It's just a sad situation for so many. But it need not be there, because that's why you are there. You're there to say, let me help you get these documents done. They're going to protect you and from your family from the finest medical services on the planet. We can do amazing things, even if it's not in your best interest. But studies indicate that 70 to 95% of people, that's those 1.4 and those 30,000, would rather refuse medical treatment than have their lives medically prolonged in an incompetent or another poor prognosis state. That's why I said those folks didn't choose that. The problem was, remember what we said at the beginning? There's something worse than not knowing what to do. It's doing nothing. Doing nothing. Even knowing what to do and doing nothing. And let me tell you, in your family, with your parents, with your friends, with your brothers and sisters, there are family members doing nothing. And in your client base, there are family members doing nothing. Somebody needs to go wave the red flag and say, stop, stop, stop. There's a truck headed your way, barreling along the highway at night with its lights out, coming in the opposite road in your direction and in your lane. And that truck with no lights is racing toward you, and it's called death, and it's going to smack. It's going to be there. It's coming. You ought to know that. But you ought to prepare. You can't get out of the way. That truck is roaring down its way. But you can decide whether it's going to impact and destroy, or whether it's just going to bring a peaceful end. That's your choice. 75 to 95% of your clients, of your family members would say, hey, I don't want that. I don't want to be in a nursing home. I don't want to be in a comatose state and kept alive. I don't want to up bills to the family. Comfort care. That's also known as hospice in some areas. It's also known as palliative care. And this week I was having a conversation. In fact, Jamie and I met with the hospice folks in Kentucky and had a long chat with them. And part of the problem is that most people say, and I'm sure you've heard it mentioned in your family and in your circle, oh no, did you hear about Bill? They called in hospice. When what they should be saying is, thank goodness, did you hear about Bill? They called in hospice. He will be kept more comfortable and his life will be longer because he's done this. The problem with hospice and palliative care is nobody does it until the last 6 weeks of life. Listen, it should start in the last 6 months of life. And then you may have an 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th month. But if you wait until the end when you're so deteriorated, it's not going to work. Hospice and palliative care, comfort care, really important. Now, the reason some people are afraid of this because they've heard of a DNR. I want to tell you just what that means and why you shouldn't be afraid of it. It really sounds scary. And what some people think of, well, a living will is a DNR. That means they're just going to let me die. It's not an order to stop treatment to keep you alive. It is not an order to stop treatment and not keep you alive. It's not that at all. It simply means this. When your heart stops, you do not want to receive CPR or ventilator care. Now, that doesn't mean if your heart stops and everything else is still living, it doesn't mean they should use the paddles on you to give you an electroshock. But what it does mean is don't break my breastbone, don't break my ribs, don't collapse my lungs, pushing and pushing and pushing to get my heart going again. Don't harm me in order to help me. If you need to use the paddles, if you want to use breathing, but no heroic efforts. Now, if my cognition is there, if I'm aware of what's going on, do what you need to do, but don't harm me in order to help me. I don't want to have that. I don't want a ventilator care. You know, when we see CPR on TV, what happens? Well, they'll always come back to life. Gosh, another miracle. Thank you. The truth is that only happens in 1% to 2% of the cases of people who have CPR. This is what my friend Stephen Kiernan said. This is the only book I could find when my brother was in the hospital to talk about end-of-life planning. And he says, a DNR means do all you can to keep me alive, but when I'm dead, then let me go. Isn't that what your family wants? Isn't that probably what your clients want? I think that's a marvelous quote to share with others. Do all you can to keep me alive, but when I'm dead, then let me go. Not afraid of what's going to come after. I'm afraid of what's going to do to me before the after comes. You know, you have a wonderful privilege being an advisor, and that's one of the reasons I enjoy so much having these times to chat with you. You know, I sit in your chair. I sit in your seat. I talk to clients. I've done exactly what you've been doing. I've been nervous about talking about products. I've tried to make good, effective sales presentations. I know what it's like when things don't go right. I know what it's like when you have a bad week and a bad day and a bad month. I know what it's like, though, when, wow, you suddenly get a little more professional, you get a little more proficient, and before long, you are amazing because you know exactly what you're doing. You know what language to use. You know language matters, and you are a sales machine, not because you're a slick salesman, because you understand the needs of your clients and how your products match those needs. Did you understand? It's not because you're a slick salesman. Boy, he could sell Eskimos refrigerators if he wanted to. I don't want to sell Eskimos refrigerators, but I tell you what I want to do. I want to help those people who need what I'm offering be able to see the reason why it matches them. That's what a good salesman does. When you do that, you know, your clients become your friends. My best friends when I was sitting in your chair were the people I served. I liked all those folks. And you know what? I can still tell you their names. Tom Baldridge and Flo and Don and Malcolm. Oh my gosh. What wonderful folks. And your advice can be critical to the success of the families that you advise. That was part of the joy, was helping people solve problems. And you know how you do that? You do that by educating your clients. We are a financially illiterate country. We don't have any clue how money works. I'm so glad that that's part of the commitment that your firm has made, is to understand how money works, because your clients are going to rely on your wisdom. It's not theirs, and certainly not what they read. Gosh, there's so many creepy things out there and people trying to sell you bad stuff. You are one of those persons who becomes a family friend because you are speaking the truth in love. And your business is going to grow as you learn more and more about the needs of the family. That's so important. And how do you learn more and more? Well, we help you do that in NetLaw, because once you open a NetLaw account and your client starts completing the documents, then you're reminded of how important that family vault is. Because in the family vault, you want to put your life insurance. What? No life insurance? Well, let me talk to you about that. You want to put in your guaranteed retirement income. You've heard me say that a lot. What's that? No, it's not Social Security. It's a guaranteed annuity payment. You want to be sure you put your IRA, your college savings, your savings account, your 401k, your long-term care. You just start mentioning all the things that you have that you can offer clients that's going to benefit them. And you know what clients need, and you know pretty much what they can afford. So be sure and talk with them about what you offer. Your business is going to grow as you learn more and more about the needs of the family. Isn't that good news? Gosh, bacon. People love bacon. Not everybody, but man, those of us who do can't get enough. And I hope you're going to see that a living will and what we offer in NetLaw, well, it may not smell like bacon, but I tell you, it's got a universal appeal. Everybody needs it. So thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it. Next week, we're going to talk about, well, how did that happen? We're going to talk about a family trust, or why have a family trust. The must trust. You know, with net law, you not only get the medical net law MD, you not only get the financial, you get the estate planning, but you get a revocable living trust. I want to be sure you understand what that is and the value of that to your client. So next week, we're going to talk about that. So take good notes, follow along. And by the way, this is Stan Craig, Mark, Jennifer, Vanessa, and Mary. Gosh, we all want to be here to help. You are why we're here. And we want to be sure that you know that we care. If you haven't done step 6 yet, do it. If you haven't participated in BOGO, it's coming to an end. Be sure and do it. There's so many ways that we can be there to help. And by the way, when BOGO stops, don't think, well, my clients don't need it anymore. It's not that expensive in the first place. So keep on marketing, because your client need doesn't stop simply because of BOGO may have. Tell the truth to your clients. Hey, doesn't smell like bacon, but it's really good for you. That's what we do. Looking forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, give us a call. Drop me an email, Stan Craig or scraig@netlaw.com, or give us a call. We're happy to help and look forward to chatting with you every week at this time.